County and the RGV Matters candidate forum for the runoff candidates for the Texas Senate District 24 Democratic ballot. And we will be seeing Sara Stapleton Barrera and Eddie Lucio Jr. But first, I would like to thank our sponsors. They're pretty important in helping us put these things on, and that would be Rhodes Enterprises, Sam Garcia Architect, Frost Bank, IBC Bank, DHR Health, Clark Chevrolet, DTM Realty Group, Rio Bank, Val Peason, Ernie Williams, Code RGV, Copy Zone, and Upper Valley Mail Service. And we want to give them a big thanks. And we will start by introducing our Hidalgo County Elections Director, Yvonne Ramon, who is going to give you an update on what to expect with early voting and on election day. Now, unfortunately, Yvonne had just a little bit of trouble getting on, so you won't see her smiling face, but the next voice you hear will be Yvonne Ramon, our Hidalgo County Election Director. Yvonne, will you tell us what to expect?
Thank you, Nedra. It is a pleasure to be here, and I am so sorry right before the video camera went out, but that's okay. What's important is to be able to hear. Of course, thank you all the candidates, thank you all the members that are present tonight, because this is such an important primary runoff election. Important because of the pandemic, because of the issues that we have before us, that everyone working together will only demonstrate what we can accomplish if we all work together. Let me just give you again, for those that are listening, a brief overview that Monday, this coming Monday, June 29th, will start the election. As always, we will open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. What is different is that in the past, the primary runoffs only go on for 5 days. But you know what? Our governor went ahead and extended that term so that it will last until Friday, July 10th, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., keeping in mind that this Friday, this coming Friday, July 3rd and July 4th is a federal holiday. So those 2 days there will not be any voting. Again, Friday, July 3rd and Saturday, July 4th. But other than that, we will open up again on that Sunday, July 5th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. as we always have. Lots of opportunity to go and vote during early vote right before that Tuesday, July 14th. We have our regular 28 early vote locations. Many of you are already familiar, but if you're not, don't hesitate to go on our website or call our office at 318-2570 and ask the questions before you go vote. You're also able to view a sample of your ballot. You're able to be knowledgeable of what to expect before you head out to the polls. Now more than ever, please, more than ever, it is important that we are ready. We want to let our community of Hidalgo County voters know that we are prepared. We are prepared to make sure that every voter is safe, that our poll workers are safe, and that the community can rest assured that we have been working with the 28 poll locations as well as our clerks and our judges to be ready to strongly recommend and encourage that everyone follow the CDC guidelines. What are those guidelines? Simply, if we all vote safe, that means that we all can choose to wear a mask while you are in the polling location. We can all choose to practice social distancing by optimizing the space that we have at the poll location, because if we all work together, then we will all be safe together. Keeping in mind that maintaining those safe practices such as frequent hand washing, your self-screening, doing all that before you head out to the polls will only make sure that Hidalgo County votes safe, and that once this election is over, everything will and everyone will be safe and everything will go smoothly. So I'm encouraging everyone to please follow the guidelines and to call us, to contact us should you have any questions. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I encourage you to email me or to call me so that we can answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne Ramon. And I want to assure all of our listeners that this portion of our candidate forum and the other two portions that have been pre-recorded with U.S. Representative District 15 on the Republican ballot and U.S. Senate candidates on the Democratic ballot will be shown on our Futuro RGV Facebook page and website starting Friday, the 26th, or let's say 26th, yeah, and running all through early voting and election day. And now at this point, I want to introduce to you our moderator, Sydney Ramon, who is the president of RGV Matters, and they are co-hosting with Futuro RGV. Sydney, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nedra. And once again, thank you to our candidates for being here with us today for the runoff for Democratic Texas Senate District 27. That is quite a mouthful. So I would love to begin by introducing our media panel with Davis Rankin. He is 710 KURV. Let me tell me that I'm saying that right. And we're really excited to have him. And then in ballot order, I'd like to introduce our candidates, Sara Stapleton Barrera and Senator Eddie Lucio Jr. Now they'll be telling you more about themselves in their 1-minute opening statement, beginning in just the way that I read it with Sara Stapleton Barrera.
Thank you, Sydney. I'm a mother of 3, a constitutional lawyer, and a former teacher. I feel honored and privileged to be in the position that I'm in right now and incredibly grateful for the success that I've had in my career. Just 7 years ago, I found myself as a single mom of a 2-year-old daughter, just really trying to make the day-to-day. At that point in my life, I learned how difficult the struggle was to care for a child, pay for daycare, and hold a full-time job. I came to find that I live in a world that can be extremely cruel to working class women, single mothers, and working families. I was able to squeeze myself out of that situation, but I got a law degree, and that really put things in perspective for me. And I remember feeling angered by how unfair the system is. Not everybody in our community has the privilege to go to college, much less law school. As an attorney who's in the trenches of the courtroom day in and day out, I have seen how good laws really affect people and how bad laws ruin lives. And it's time for a change.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Senator Eddie Lucio Jr.
Thank you, Ms. Ramon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is truly an honor to be with you today and to share with you how over the years we have helped our communities and our citizens with opportunities to increase their quality of life. Thankfully, I have a verifiable track record and have worked with many nonprofits and organizations representing housing, colonias, families, and children advocates who have testified in front of state committees on the benefits of the bills that I have authored. This will give you a true picture of my legislative accomplishments and voting records on all issues. The lives of our children with disabilities, the lives of working families, and the lives of the impoverished, the poor, and the disadvantaged in our communities are the reason why I choose to be a public servant. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and start with the 2 questions that were previously sent to our candidates and their responses. And so I'm going to go ahead and reiterate these questions for our audience. So from Sara Stapleton Barrera to Eddie Lucio is our first question. So Senator Lucio, once I read this, you'll be able to respond. This question is, Senator, in the past, you endorsed Ernie Aliceda, a Republican candidate against Dory Contreras, the first woman to ever sit as Chief Justice of the 13th Court of Appeals. You also said in a recent interview that you'd like to see your son succeed in the state Senate. If one were to say you favor male candidates, even if the candidate is Republican, and find them more fit than any progressive woman, what would you say to that? You'll now have 1 minute to give your response, or you'll now have 1 minute to give your response.
The question has 3 separate parts, and I will answer accordingly. First, to clear up the false accusation, I have never endorsed Ernie Aliceda. A dear friend of mine asked me to attend a party at his ranch where Regent Aliceda was his special guest and asked me to provide a gavel and a flag to Aliceda for his public service as a University of Texas Board of Regents and a state district judge. Because I honor constituents who address the needs of our constituents and through public service And because he's an honorable man, I honored him. As in any social event, pictures were taken, but let me make it crystal clear. They were never for any endorsement. When I endorse, I do it publicly and openly, just like when I endorsed Hillary Clinton when she first ran for the highest office in the nation. Of course, I would be proud if my son would succeed me as a senator, or my daughter would become superintendent of schools in Brownsville, Texas. I stand on facts, not on accusations.
Thank you. This next question will be from Senator Lucio to Sara Stapleton Barrera. The question is, Ms. Stapleton, in your campaign, you have continually and consistently insulted Texas leaders. How can District 27 voters put their trust in you that you will effectively deliver in all the campaign promises that you make when on a weekly basis you continue to insult the leaders in Austin who are instrumental in your effectiveness to pass laws? There are only 12 Democrats, and it takes 19 senators to pass a bill. How will you effectively deliver on addressing the needs of our communities when instead of building bridges, you are continually burning them? You'll now have 1 minute for response.
So of all of our Texas leaders, I have critiqued just two. The most atrocious of Texas, Dan Patrick, who thinks our elderly should be sacrificed during COVID-19, and Senator Lucio, who time and time again discriminates against his constituents. Now, let's talk about this, why it takes 19 senators to pass a bill. And I'm surprised that you asked that, Senator. It used to be 2/3, and now it takes 3/5, which means Democrats have a much harder time passing Democratic bills. It used to be much easier, and it was our very own Senator Lucio, the lone Democrat, that voted in favor of the bill that did this. So let's not forget that. Now, I will work across the table and the aisle to bring jobs to South Texas, raise the minimum wage, and to better fund public schools. But I refuse to throw my constituents under the bus. I will be a colleague to the Republican Party, but I will be nobody's pet.
Thank you. This next question will be a question that you all have not previously seen from your opponent. So we'll go ahead and start, as we did before, with the question from Sara Stapleton Barrera to Senator Eddie Lucio. So this question, Senator, is, in an article published by the Texas Tribune detailing the private prison industry's involvement in Willacy County, you yourself reported profiting at least $115,000 between 2003 and 2006 for consulting these very same private prison companies. It's been widely reported that you used your position as state senator to lobby local officials on behalf of these private prison companies that you worked for. These private detention centers that you opened the door for in Willacy County have made headlines for overcrowding, serving maggot-filled meals, and eventually being burned to the ground in protest, resulting in the loss of 400 jobs and leaving Willacy County in debt. Senator, if one were to say you put your own monetary interests before your constituents, how would you respond?
Well, first of all, I think that you need to look at what really has happened there. When the textile industry shut down in Willacy County, I was asked to see what I could do. I was visiting a brother-in-law and sister-in-law in Laredo, Texas, the Gospel Truth, and I met a gentleman that wanted to, or was working in Willacy County, and he asked me to see if I could help him. And he hired me, he hired my consulting firm. We did. Now, Willacy County has made hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. And the one that can tell you specifically is the county judge there in the commissioner's court. A lot of people were hired. A lot of people had jobs. The reason that shut down is because there was a riot in the prison. And that's the reason it shut down. Had there not been that riot, that prison would still be operating at full force. But Willacy County is bouncing back. I've helped them in many ways. And I'm not ashamed of anything I've done there. Thank you.
Thank you. To Sara Stapleton Barrera. Senator Lucio has a record of successfully addressing the needs of low-income residents. He's authored millions of dollars for infrastructure, established higher and medical education opportunities, enabled thousands of low-income Texans to become homeowners, and has taken on unscrupulous developers who prey on the innocence of unsuspecting non-English speaking constituents in land and home sales. Reputable nonprofits have called him a champion for low-income people. As an Anglo candidate who refuses to acknowledge the record of a racial minority who has broken the glass ceiling in the Capitol, How is your continual denial of the progress achieved by a racial minority public servant in the best interest of a district which is predominantly a racial minority? How would it be better served by an Anglo candidate who purposely denies the progress everyone has worked so hard to achieve?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that question. Look, I'm going to be quite honest with this one. Senator, I think when you started off 30 years ago, I think that you were moving in the right direction. But since then, we've had many problems. I mean, time and time again, you've discriminated against our women population. You've discriminated against our LGBTQ community. You've put private prison industry and made millions of dollars off this industry. You put $800 million worth of border security. I mean, clearly you've lost your way, Senator, and that's the issue. Now, I may have an Anglo surname, but I'm from here. I'm born here, raised here. This is my home. This is where I intend to raise my 3 children. So those are the issues, and those are the reasons why I'm running. And the question isn't what have you done? It's what have you done for us lately? What have you done for us lately? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for answering those questions and for submitting them beforehand. I'm gonna go ahead and pass this over to our media panel, who has more questions for the both of you.
Thank you very much. And welcome to you all candidates and to all the people watching. Let's start with ballot by mail. We were told about voting earlier in this time. The Democratic Party is asked to be allowed to expand the reasons why someone can vote by mail, and the state doesn't want to do it. It's gone up. It's now in the courts. Are you for or against it, and how would that look to people?
We'll start in ballot order, and then we'll go ahead and switch off each round. So this first question will be for Ms. Barrera.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. I mean, my main concern is obviously keeping everybody safe and making sure that everybody feels comfortable voting. It's our constitutional right to vote. We should not be denied our right to vote. You know, this whole idea of, well, people cheat via mail-in ballots. You know, I think that it may happen out there. I don't think that it'll happen in this race. So I think that really it's just a matter of keeping our constituents safe, making sure that you have access to a mail-in ballot. I think everybody should have had access this go round. Unfortunately, that's not the way that it all ended up. But
Would you change the law to allow that?
I think in this certain circumstance, I mean, we're in the middle of the pandemic like we've never seen before. I think if there's any circumstance that calls for expanding mail-in ballots, it's right now. Now's the time. People can't be getting sick and dying over going to the polls. So yeah.
Okay. Mr. Lucio?
Well, I support the ballot by mail. I envision a future where we can vote by personal devices. It's why I authored a bill to allow for digital driver's license to verify identity as an important first step to voting from personal devices. There's a lot of things we can do, and I think we should accommodate the general public, and we should listen to them. And I foresee in the future where teachers might be able to vote from the schools they're at, because they're there early in the morning, leave late in the afternoon, might not have time to unfortunately go to the polling places. I want to accommodate people in any way we can to make sure they have the opportunity to vote. I will continue to support that effort, and I think that in the future we're going to see some wonderful results.
We're gonna start then the next round. The next question will go to the senator, so that we go back and forth and no one is constantly in second position or answering first or second. What does a Texas state senator do? What's your job?
We're lawmakers. We meet every other year on odd-numbered years for 140 days, and our constitutional duty is to pass the state budget. That is the only reason really we're there. But we also, over the years, have taken up opportunities to take up and consider pieces of legislation that address every issue out there in Texas. And we have a chance to create good public policy. We also have interim studies that are charges that are given to us from the Lieutenant Governor and the committees that we serve on to be able to prepare for the following session. It's quite frankly, it's a comprehensive job. It's not a job where you just address something every other year. It's a job that takes you day to day on constituent services as well.
Ma'am, how do you define the job?
Yeah, so I think it should be more than that, right? I think that a state senator should really be the leader and the guider and the one that pushes us into a new era to where we need to be. It's not just a matter of sitting back and signing off on pieces of legislation. It's being an innovator. It's being a game changer. You know, as an attorney for the past 10 years, I have seen how these bad laws really rip apart lives and create major damage all over the board. You know, I've got 3 kids, and so my stake in this is very high because I'm planning on raising my children here. But a state senator is someone that stands up and takes the community by the hand and says, hey, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're all afraid. This is what we're going to do collectively. This is what we're going to do together. We're going to tell the governor that we need this. We're going to tell our Dan Patrick that we need this. It's a person that doesn't follow. It's a person that leads with conviction.
We'll get to COVID-19 in just a second, but I want to follow up on something that you said. Do I call you Ms. Barrera or Ms. Stapleton? Ms.
Barrera's fine.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Ms. Barrera's fine.
I should know that, and thankfully they'll edit that out. If I heard you right in your in one of your answering one of the questions, you said about Mr. Lucio that he has made millions off private prisons. Did I hear that right? And what evidence do you have that he made millions?
If I said millions, I should have said hundreds of thousands.
Okay. Would you ban private prisons? Were you able to do so?
I'll go
Absolutely.
30 seconds for this since the follow-up. So just
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think private prisons is basically putting a number on a individual's head. I think it's immoral. I think it's wrong. I've been inside those private prisons. I've been inside those private entities time and time again for no more than an hour. But that 1 hour that you spend in that private prison and I can't even describe to you the feeling of just visiting an inmate, much less living there. And for a legislator to put a dollar sign on this person's forehead is immoral.
Senator, would you ban private prisons in Texas? I mean, the state private prisons, the federal government will be able to have private prisons if they want. What do you think?
Well, I think private industry in many occasions have shown us how to run a prison. But Ms. Barrera has been in private prisons because she protects and supports criminals, and I've never made millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars on anything I've ever done in terms of work, but she has, I'm sure, collected many thousands of dollars from drug dealers who don't have a bank account. So, we need to look at it. But if you want to look at finances, let's put it on the table, Ms. Stapleton, and stop misleading people.
I'm sorry, your time is up, Senator Lucio.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Davis, yes, you can ask a follow-up to which candidate?
To Mr. Lucio. What do you mean she's made millions off of drug dealers who don't have bank accounts?
Well, I mean, I'm just asking her. She's saying I made millions or hundreds of thousands. When you make a statement like that, you better have something to prove it with. I'm saying she's probably made that kind of money representing hardened criminal drug dealers because she specializes in that, and she specializes in suing doctors. We want to get rid of doctors and medical malpractice suits.
Go to you for a response.
Yeah, I would love to respond. So Senator Lucio, you said precisely to the Texas Tribune that you've made $115,000 in that private prison industry just for those 3 years that you were there. Now, I wish I could say the same. I've been a public defender and defending indigents and the poor. So if I wish I made as much money as you said that I did, but you can certainly look it up if you would like. But yes, I'm very proud of my work as a public defender and representing the poor and the indigent.
All right, let's talk about COVID-19 coronavirus. The latest, a recent report from the governor is that we clocked 5,000 new cases in one day. So the goal of keeping more people not infected so they don't have to go to the hospital, so the hospitals are not overrun, that goal doesn't seem to be being met. If you were asked what would you do about it, what would you do about it? What advice would you give, Ms. Barrera?
Yeah, so this is a problem, is that our state leader has been very lax on the issue. I mean, if you look at the different states that have spiked and that haven't, Texas is among the top, and we're right there in line with Arizona and these other states that haven't even met their peak yet. The problem is we acted too slow, too late. We needed much more guidance and much more structure from the very beginning. When we first saw this hitting and we first saw how it was affecting all these other states, that's when we should have jumped. And that's when we should have said, hey, we need to be prepared. We need to have all our PPP. We need to expand healthcare, Medicare. We didn't do any of that. We need to prepare beds. We need to make sure that we have gymnasiums with beds ready in case it gets to that point. We need testing. I mean, it took us weeks and weeks before we got testing and the drive-thrus. So we were already behind the ball, and we didn't have anybody stepping up saying, hey, this is what we need. Let's do it. I tried, but I'm not a leader yet, so no one listened.
Mr. Lucio?
I favor more testing. Obviously, I'm very concerned about the rise in numbers and those testing positive in the state. I have a good relationship with Dr. Hellerstedt. He and I have been on the phone several times. One of the first letters that I wrote to the governor was requesting more testing and for Medicaid expansion. That's public record. And I would ask people to look at my website, to look at those letters, to read those letters, so people can understand where I've been since the pandemic started. I have not been in hiding. My website will show you that I've been very active. I've been serving the less fortunate. I've been helping provide meals. I personally have delivered 8,000 meals. We've counted those. Not that I want to be recognized for that, but I haven't been dormant. You know, you can look at both my website and my opponent's website, and she's been totally inactive. But you know, she's got the right to be in this race, and I'm going to treat her with dignity and respect when she, you know, and as a lady. But she's got to, you know, behave as such.
Let's start with Senator Lucio on this one. You mentioned Medicaid. Medicaid is medical care available to the poor, by and large the poor in this state, and there have been attempts, I don't know how far back, to expand the amount of money, the gross amount of money the state sets aside from paying Medicaid bills. The legislature, under the Republicans still in charge in the House and the Senate, have consistently refused to do that. Do you have any reason to believe, Senator, that assuming that they're still in charge when you go back, if you go back, that their view on expanding Medicaid spending will be any different? Is this going to be a better time for that?
We're always hopeful, you know, that this crisis opens up their eyes, opens up everybody's eyes. I will remind everyone that the only time I voted against the state budget was in 2011. And I voted against that budget because it had a $7.2 billion tax cut on healthcare services in Medicaid. I voted against that budget because it had a $5.2 billion cut. I'm sorry if I said tax cut. It cut in education. So 7.2 in education, 5.4 in healthcare and 5.4 in education. You know, those are two issues that are most important to us. I support the expansion of Medicaid. I hope that I can work with state leaders to make sure that our people in the Valley get their fair share of funding.
Ms. Barrera?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I believe that healthcare is a human right. I mean, across the country, state legislators are fighting to guarantee healthcare for their citizens, and we need to be next, and we need to be the late leaders on this. We have the most uninsured rates down here in South Texas than any other place. And, you know, I do not take money from big health insurance and pharmaceutical companies that put corporate profits over the health of our people first. We need more than just the status quo, which is a chicken plate fundraiser or a GoFundMe campaigns, and someone that'll be a loud voice, and not just hope things will get better, but a loud voice for the most vulnerable of our communities. As your state senator, I will fight to guarantee health care for all Texans, expand Medicaid, and increase funding for community centers. That's what needs to be done now, like yesterday, it needed to be done.
Let's assume, I don't have the figures, I'm not sure they've been published yet, but because of coronavirus and price of oil collapsing and taxes off of petroleum products is a big part of the budget, that the amount of revenue to spend when the legislature meets this next January will be substantially lower than it has been in the past, which means somebody's not going to get what they want, not just expanded spending, but they may lose some of their budget. Now, what would you be in favor of? You don't have to give figures necessarily, but what, in terms of priorities, what would you put at the bottom? Ms. Barrera.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the rumor going around that frightens me to death is that they're going to cut education. And that would be a huge, huge lose for us down here in South Texas. What needs to happen is we need to utilize a green energy to instill good paying, reliable jobs here in South Texas. And I don't know why it hasn't been done yet, because we can make money, we can keep our people with jobs and employed, and avoid some of this pitfall that we're going to be facing because of COVID-19. I mean, what it takes, what we can do to fix this is we create a Texas jobs program that will fund thousands of good paying jobs to transition to green energy and to fight the coronavirus pandemic by mass producing PPE, COVID-19 testing, hospital supplies that we desperately need. But we certainly do not cut healthcare. We certainly do not cut health education. We hold on to those close and dear to our hearts before we're really in ruins.
Senator?
I have already indicated to my colleagues and the leadership that I would not favor cutting public education or healthcare 5%. They're looking at cutting 5% across the board. I do not favor that. I have been in constant communication with my caucus as well. Every day we text each other, and we certainly are not going to be supportive of any cuts that will hurt the Rio Grande Valley or the less fortunate in our state, which we have many of. I hope and pray that the oil and gas industry bounces back. Everybody does, because there's tens of thousands of jobs that are held by people in the Rio Grande Valley, men and women that depend on those jobs to maintain their families and create a better quality of life for themselves. I support any effort to strengthen the economic factors in our state so that we can get back to normal. But first, we have to defeat the coronavirus.
Thank you.
I heard somebody.
Oh, sorry, that was me. Go ahead, David.
Speaking of the coronavirus, well, let me start again. Quick follow-up. However long the coronavirus lasts before it's tamed, I have read more than once that there are other pandemics coming our way. This may be a medical question more than a state senator question, but what can the state do to prepare itself for that day?
Who is this follow-up question for, Davis?
This for Mr. Lucio, then we'll do Sarah.
Forgive me. I had a little lapse and I didn't hear the whole question. Please.
Okay, that may be my fault. I'm drifting away from the microphone. One day COVID-19 will be tamed. We'll have it under control. But I've read more than once that there are other pandemics headed our way. It's just a matter of time. What can the state do? What should it do now to start preparing for that?
That's a
Senator?
very good question. Very good question. And actually, this pandemic had taught us many lessons. And one of those lessons is not to be afraid to stockpile, to make sure that we have, those things that we need. I plan to file a bill that creates a state stockpile of personal protective equipment so that we don't have to rely on the federal government to get supplies quickly. We're already working on that. My legislative director, I informed him to start writing that bill.
Okay. Ms. Barrera?
Yeah, so we invest in studies. I mean, we don't wait until something hits and then scramble around. We've got to be prepared far in advance. So when something does happen, we're not scrambling just how we are right now. So what do? We invest in studies. We put money into scientists, into people that'll figure out what are the trends, what's happening next, what is likely to happen with the current situation. We pre-prepared with our testings, which we were not this time around. We be prepared with the beds, which we were not this time around. And we invest in our healthcare providers, and we get nurses trained. We get LVNs trained. We make sure that training is affordable, that people can get through schooling. So we're ready to go. But yeah, we certainly be proactive. We don't sit around and wait like what happened this time.
So that was Davis's last question, I believe, if we're getting ready to wrap up.
I can make up more.
No, you're good. We have just one final question right before we get to closing statements for the both of you. And that question is, what will you do on your first day in office if re-elected and if elected? So we'll go ahead and start with Ms. Barrera, I believe, yes.
My first day will probably breathe. I can't even breathe right now, but I will probably take a breath of relief. I think it's so important that we really instill ethics into our state legislator. There's so much underhanded dealing. There's so much consulting fees. There's so much legislation that's written by lobbyists for our leaders. And I think that's problematic. We need to clean up the government, instill ethics, make sure there's transparency so we know exactly why our legislators are voting the way that they're voting, who's putting money in their pockets, and follow the trail and make sure that we as citizens know what our leaders' priorities really are. And we don't have that right now. And I think that's extremely important. I certainly would like to know. And I think that when I'm your state senator, it will be transparent and open and everybody can know sort of where I'm coming from. So that's day one.
Thank you. Senator Lucio?
Well, I'll continue to do what I've always done, and that is to try to communicate with all legislators, both in the House and Senate. I have served in both chambers. I know the legislative process. I voted for every ethics bill that's ever come before our chamber. I've worked with men and women in each sector of this state who are honorable people. No one's lining up their pockets with money, and if somebody does, then obviously they're gonna get caught sooner or later, and that will not be the case, with the people hopefully that I work with. I take great pride in all the things that we've accomplished. I ask people to look at those accomplished in my website, and I'll continue to do what I do best, and that's communicate, make sure I compromise, and make sure I put the value first.
Thank you. And that wraps up our final question. So we're going to go ahead and move to closing statements. And we're going to do those closing statements in ballot order. So beginning with Sara Stapleton Barrera, you will have 1 minute and 30 seconds for your closing statement.
Thank you. So I do not discriminate against women. I do not discriminate against the LGBTQ community. I do not vote against public education. I do not make hundreds of thousands of dollars off the private prison industry. I do not vote against our environments. I do not vote in favor of big business over the rights of working class South Texans. I do not side with far-right Republicans. I do not let lobbyists write legislation for me. I do not take consulting positions that make me rich. I do not intend to become a career politician and stay in office for 75 years. I do not intend on crowning my child with a position once I'm done. I do not intend on making millions of dollars at the expense of the people. My plan is to serve, to listen to the people, to write legislation with the people, to leave the RGV better when I leave office than it was when I got there. Now, when it comes to being a lady and behaving myself, I will not. I will be loud, I will be persistent, and I will not cower away from the misogynists. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Lucio, you now have 1 minute and 30 seconds for your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank, first of all, those that sponsored this forum tonight. I have 4 things that I offer the people of Senate District 27. I offer them experience, both in the House and Senate. I offer them seniority. I'm number 3 in the Senate right now. I offer them a track record, how I voted. I want people to see it. You know, listening to someone just rattle off with no substance and no background check and no research is one thing, but looking at a track record and looking at voting records is something else. One of the most important things that I think we've been involved with over the years is establishing relationships, not only with people in my district and people in every sector of the state where I've traveled to represent the state of Texas and the Valley, but I've established relationships with every elected official in every office. I've established relationships with those that are able to help me help the Valley, and my track record will show that. I worked very hard to develop these 4 things over my years of service to be in the best possible position to serve your interests at the state capitol, especially in the light of the current pandemic and the recession expected to affect the state of Texas. So God bless you all.
Thank you so much. And that wraps up our forum for runoff Democratic candidate, Texas Senate District 27. Once again, quite the mouthful. Thank you all for being here with us today. Thank you, Sara Stapleton Barrera and Senator Eddie Lucio Jr., as well as our media panel, Davis Rankin, as well as Yvonne Ramon for giving us incredibly helpful information. You can find this forum, as well as our 2 other pre-recorded virtual forums, on Friday, right before early voting. So don't forget, get out there and vote. Your vote matters, and it's important. So once again, thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here. I believe that's the end of the recording, so great.